Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Metzia daf Daled. This week's learning is sponsored by Rachel Savin in loving memory of her father, Shalom ben Shmuel Zichrono Livracha. And today's daf is sponsored by Miriam Tannenbaum in honor of Rina Yahalom and in memory of Rebecca Baruch. Rina, a dear former student in Bat Bayit, and her close friend Rebecca Baruch Hashem Yikom Dama, had planned to be chavrutot as they started their daf Yomi journey together. Honoring Rina, she begins her daf journey with Bava Metzia in Rebecca's memory. May Rina's learning be a source of strength for her and a zchut for all of Am Yisrael. Amen. Okay. First of all, we have a siyum tonight, so looking forward to seeing you all there. Even if you're new to Bava Metzia, you can join our siyum. We have a great lineup. Rabbanit Shimon is going to be teaching Can We Undo the Past? And we're going to hear from Terry Kravosha from a lawyer's perspective on Bava Kama. All you have to do is sign up for Zoom. Everyone gets your own Zoom link. And it's later today at 8:30 Israel time, whatever time that is where you are. And we hope to see you all there. I'll remind everyone that the last daf of Bava Metzia, Bava Kama, we already learned. So we'll be learning just the very last section together. So make sure to finish up to the last about 4 lines on daf Kuf Yud Tet. Okay, we're going to get started with a quick review of the second part of yesterday's daf, really from the beginning, from the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph. We saw this braita that Rabbi Chiya brought. Rabbi Chiya taught us this halakha. There's something in general called modeh bemiktzat, which we learned about, which is if you claim I owe you $100 and I claim I only owe you 50 or 40 or whatever it might be, I have to take an oath on the rest. So comes Rabbi Chiya and he says, what if I didn't admit to anything? And I said, I don't owe you. I denied the entire claim. But witnesses came and said, I owe you half. Then I also have to take an oath on the second half. And he said, how do I know that? He said, from a kal v'chomer. Okay, it's a kal v'chomer reasoning, which he said, how could it be that my own admission is going to be more strict than witnesses testifying? And therefore, it must be I have to take an oath. That's from kal v'chomer. So again, what does it mean? It means that if I'm not willing to take an oath on the other half, I have to pay you the entire claim. And that's really what it means. So he says, number one, we're going to learn that from kal v'chomer. Number two, our Mishna can be provided as a proof for that. Because why? Because if you remember, what did we say? Each one is holding half a talit. And this is why the sugya comes up, because the proof is going to be from our Mishna, even though today we're actually going to reject this and say it's not a good proof. But right now we're going to assume that's a proof. What's the proof? Each of us is holding half the talit, which is as if there's witnesses for each one on their half. And what does the Mishnah say? It's not enough to just split a 50-50. We each have to take an oath about the other half. So what do you see? There's witnesses that obligate me to half. So I actually have to take an oath in order, well, the truth is it's a little different, but in order to keep my half, I have to take an oath about it. Okay, so now, the first thing the Gemara tried to do is figure out what is the kal v'chomer. And we were stuck on that because we tried to say it's from modeh bemiktzat, right? Your pet. Since your mouth, right, that was the obvious kal v'chomer. If your mouth can obligate you, then kal v'chomer, witnesses can obligate you to take an oath. But we raised a problem after a few attempts, which we weren't successful at knocking it out. But then we finally said, look, can't be, because admission is actually more strict. It can't be kal v'chomer. Let's learn from a light case to a more stringent case. No, because your own admission is very strong. Why is it so strong? And why is it more strict than witnesses? Because witnesses can be knocked out by other witnesses. But my own admission can never be knocked out. If I come and admit, that's stronger than any witnesses. So if witnesses come and contradict my claim, it doesn't matter. So there, that doesn't work. Then we tried at the very end of the daf, we said, okay, maybe it's from one witness. If one witness, which can't obligate you money, okay, if one witness comes and says that I have something of yours in my house, and I say, no way, no how, and you say, yes, it's mine, and you bring one witness to prove your point, I don't have to pay it to you, but I do need to take an oath that it's mine. And if I'm not willing to take an oath, then I do need to pay you. So even though one witness can't obligate me money, it can obligate me to take an oath. So 2 witnesses, which obviously can obligate me to pay money, all the more so they should make me take an oath. But then we said that doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Because this is where we ended yesterday's stuff. One witness makes me take an oath on what? On what the one witness testified about. The one witness said, this object is yours. And I said, it's mine. The one witness came and said, it's yours. I now have to take an oath that it's really mine on the object they testified about. The 2 witnesses who said, I owe you 50, and now make me take an oath about the other 50, are making me take an oath about something that they didn't testify about. So you can't learn from one to the other. That doesn't make any sense. So that's what we're up to. Ella Amar Rav Papa. So second line of Daf Dal. So Rav Papa said, let's try a third thing, which is Ati migilgul shvua de edachad. He's going to stick with the edachad, but some other halakha de edachad. This is called gilgul shvua. We're going to start and end with this topic. Gilgul shvua means that if, let's say, you have two objects in my house that you claim there's two objects in my house that you claim are yours. One of them you bring one witness about. So I have to take an oath about that. Once I have to take an oath about that, since you have a second claim against me with no proof, I'm going to always, since I'm already obligated an oath, we don't like to obligate oaths when there's no oath to obligate. But once I'm obligated an oath, we can make me take an oath about other things. You might remember, we learned this with the sota. The sota takes all these oaths on all these other things as well. Okay, so now, basically, okay, I'm not going to go back and explain all that, but if you remember, great. If not, not. So now what do we say? It's gilgul shvua, mala gilgul shvua. Now this would be perfect because what is the gilgul shvua about? Where now one witness can obligate me to take an oath on something that they didn't testify about, because that's exactly what a gilgul shvua is. So mala gilgul shvua de erechad can shvua goreret shvua. But now they're saying, no, you can't learn it from there. Because gilgul shvua of erechad, what is the thing that causes the shvua? Why do I have to take an oath now about the second object, which there's no testimony about? Not because of the erecha, but because shvua goreret shvua. Because I'm already obligated shvua, now I have to take another shvua. But you can't then learn to edim the mamon machayve. It's the money that they testified about that's now going, right? Remember, you claim I owe you 100. The witnesses say I owe you 50. So when they testify about money that I owe you 50, you can't say that money obligation is going to make me take an oath from gilgul shvua, because gilgul shvua, what's making me take the oath? The oath is making me take an oath, not the money that I'm obligated to pay. So you can't learn from there. So we have to go back to the beginning. And now what we're going to do is what's called a bemiktzat. We're going to, and this is somewhat like a mathematical equation. They're going to say, remember, we tried to learn it from admission, from your peh, from something you admit. We said it can't because there's a stringency there. We tried to learn it from erecha, from one witness. We said we can't because it's obligating a different type of oath. One is obligating an oath on what you testified about, and we wanted to teach you an oath about what you didn't testify about. So now we're going to do the combination of the two. So we're going to say, Eid echad piv yochiach, mala piv she'eno b'hakasha, Eid echad yochiach she'yeshno b'hakasha m'chay b'shvur. We're going to say, right, whereas the peh is actually, when you have a modeh bemiktzat, and I admit to have, it actually makes me obligated to do an oath on what I didn't testify about, just like what we're trying to do with these witnesses. And the Eid Echad will prove, well, the whole issue that we said is more strict because you can't deny a claim. Well, Eid Echad could be denied if one witness comes and says the object's mine, and I bring a witness that says you bring a witness that says the object's actually yours, that's in my possession. And then I bring a witness that says the object's mine, I don't have to take a shvuah anymore. I can knock out the witness. So each one that we had an issue with, the other one doesn't have that issue. The peh proves the problem with the Eid Echad because the peh makes me obligated to take a shvuah on what I didn't testify about, just like what we're trying to say about the witnesses. And the fact that we said the peh is more strict because it can't be knocked down, well, one witness could be knocked out by hakasha, by contradictory testimony, and therefore we can't say that that's going to prevent us from learning it because the other one also, right, is more similar to two witnesses. So each one has a way in which the other one can knock out the issue of the other. And with that, we're going to say, piv yochiach, right? So again, if by aiding masha kafar unishba, and the peh will prove that also masha kafar on the part that you denied is the part you have to testify about, v'chazar hadin, and therefore we're going to do what's called the chazar hadin, lo re'izeh kere'izeh, v'lo re'izeh kere'izeh. This is just repeating what I said. Each one, right, like the mirror image, each one doesn't have the one the other has, and therefore hatzara shaveh shabeh, and this is why we call it hatzara shaveh, the least common denominator between peh and one witness from which we're going to derive two witnesses to the obligated oath. In both cases, there's a claim, there's a counterclaim, and you have to take an oath. Okay, so both by my admission, there's a claim, you say 100, I denied 50. With Eid Echad, you say, I owe you the object, and I say, I don't owe it to you. And they both require an oath. So likewise, from there, we can take something that also has the same least common denominator. Witnesses, two witnesses, there's a claim. There's two witnesses that prove half the claim. There's a counterclaim that there's no testimony about. Right? There's some sort of claim and counterclaim. And therefore, you'll also have to take an oath. So right now, we think that we can learn the kavachomer from the combination of those two to the Eidim case. But what's the problem? There's one big problem here, which we'll deal with in a minute. But right now, we're going to suggest it's a problem. But wait, if I admit and you deny, right, I deny half your claim. So we have an argument about half a claim, but we don't have any proof that I'm lying. We have no proof of it's either you or me. One of us is right. In the Eid Echad case, so we also don't have proof that I'm lying. You claim the object's mine. You claim the object's yours. I claim the object's mine. One witness comes and says it's yours. But one witness is not enough to prove anything. So I'm not proven to be a liar at this point. So therefore, in both those cases, I'm not a proven liar. But if you claim I owe you 100 and I say I owe you nothing, and two witnesses come and claim I owe you 50, basically, I'm a liar here. And if I'm a liar, what should that have to do with anything? Well, we've talked about this before. When I take an oath, what's the idea? The idea is we assume most people are going to be honest about their oaths. People take oaths very seriously. They're not going to lie under oath. But if I'm a person who's lied before, I can't be trusted to take an oath. So it's true I didn't lie under oath, but I did lie. What's to prevent me from lying under oath? So therefore, if my own admission obligates me for an oath and one witness obligates me for an oath, you can't learn from there. The two witnesses should obligate me an oath when two witnesses basically knock out half my claim because I'm a liar now. Why should I be able to take an oath, right? We shouldn't believe me. So tomar be'edim shekenu kafran. How can we possibly require me to take an oath if I'm believed to be a liar? To which the Gemara is going to say, why are you assuming be'edim miyuchzak kafran? Why are you assuming in this case that I will be pegged as a liar? It's not true. I'm not pegged as a liar. Now, what does it mean to be pegged as a liar? To be pegged as a liar means they won't accept my oath in court. It means they won't accept testimony if I come in it, right? We're going to get in Sanhedrin to all the cases where people are not accepted as witnesses in court. So why are you not accepted as a witness in court? If you stole money, if we're worried that you're going to lie about a monetary claim. But this actually will not make you a puzzle witness. You will not be disqualified as a witness in court if, in this case, as we said, you claim I owe 100, you lent me $100, and I claimed I don't owe you anything, and witnesses came and said I owe you 50. I'm not a liar. Why not? I'm a Rav Chiya, right? You would think I'm a liar, but I'm not actually, because Rav Chiya said in the name of Rav Chiya, "Hakofer b'milva kasher le'edut." We're going to differentiate, and we actually talked about this differentiation also, something similar at the end of Bava Kama. If you have an object that you gave me to watch in your house, and you come back and say, I want my object, and I say, I don't have it, I am a liar, okay? If witnesses come and say it's in my possession, I am pegged as a liar. I will not be believed in court. Why? Because the object is in my house, and I didn't return it to you. It's pretty easy to just take an object in my house and return it to you. But if you gave me a loan and I lie and say I didn't borrow the money or I returned it already, we don't assume I'm lying. Why not? Well, we assume I'm lying, but we don't think that I'm going to be a liar in other cases because we just assume what happens in a loan. The assumption is I'm going to spend the money. And if I'm going to spend the money, I don't necessarily have the money to return. That's different from a pikadon where I'm not allowed to use the object and therefore the object must still be in my house. So if I'm lying, I'm lying. But if I say I don't have the money, I'm just trying to push you off. It doesn't mean I'm going to lie in court and lie under oath. So therefore, since we're talking about a loan case here and just returning money to you, therefore, I'm not assumed to be a liar. And therefore, we're back to saying from peh and eid echad, from my admission and one witness, that both require oaths, we can learn two witnesses that are going to require me an oath. So if two witnesses claim I owe half, just like modeh bemiktzat, also edut bemiktzat, also testimony for half, is going to obligate me to take an oath on the other half, and we're not worried that I'm a liar. But the Gemara still has a question. Here's another question, which also we're going to resolve and be left with what we said, which is, now, if you notice, when we had the confession, it said, what's the problem with confession? There's no hakasha, there's no hazama. And if you noticed, I didn't point this out, but if you noticed, when we said about the eid echad, we said it is, right, when it balances, it is bahakasha. It didn't say it is bahazama, because one witness can be knocked out by another witness and canceled. So again, if one witness comes and says, the object in my possession is yours, and then I bring a witness to say the object is mine, I don't have to take an oath anymore. That's hakasha. But what about hazama? What is hazama? Hazama is, and we'll get to this in Makot, which comes after Sanhedrin, which comes after Bava Batra, which is our next Masechet. When we get to Makot, we're going to learn Edim Zomid. That means two witnesses come and say, and in the case of one witness, it would be one witness comes and says, you can't testify that, and this happened on this day. Okay, it would be different. Let's say the way I said it, it's mine, but you would, it's yours. But you would say, I saw I saw you give it to Michelle on this and this day, and therefore I know it's yours. And, and then someone says, what are you talking about? I was with you on that day. Now, what does it mean one witness isn't bahazama? In other words, we're going to basically say, but both confession, you can't be mizim, you can't turn the confessor into an eid zomim. You also can't turn one witness into an eid zomim. Why not? Because we're going to learn that you don't, what is eid zomim? Eid zomim is two elements. One is we're going to knock you out as a witness in court. And two is that you're going to get the punishment that you tried to do to the other person. Okay, so whatever, one witness testified, or two witnesses, generally it's two witnesses testified that, let's say, I owe you $100. So if they were lying, and we know they were lying not because two witnesses say, I don't owe you $100, that would be contradictory. We don't know who to believe. But the Torah taught us that if they say, we were with you when you claimed the loan happened, and there's no way we were with you some other place, there's no way you could have said it, then the witnesses will have to pay the $100 that they tried to get me to pay you. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, one witness could never have made me pay the $100. So one witness will never get the punishment of kasher zamam, because kasher zamam means what you tried to do. Now, one witness by themselves couldn't have done anything. So therefore, there's no hazamah, because there's no punishment for hazamah. So the Gemara says, that's not halakha. That's not a difficulty. Again, what's the difficulty? The difficulty is peh and eid echad don't have hazamah, which means that they're more strict because they can't be knocked out as an eid zomim. They can't be punished as an eid zomim, I should say. Therefore, they're less strict than two witnesses that can be punished as they're more strict than two witnesses that could be punished as an eid zomim, because it makes them stronger because they can't be knocked down. They can't be punished as an eid zomim. So basically, that means they're strict, and you can't learn a kal v'chomer from them to two witnesses. To which the Gemara says, and that's why it's a little tricky, halokashya, Rabbi Chiya Torah hazamalu parich. He doesn't have that difficulty. Why doesn't he have that difficulty? Because while one witness, if one other witness comes and says, or two other witnesses, really doesn't matter, says, we were with you on that day, or I was with you on that day, you can't possibly testify. But what are we going to do with that one witness? Are we going to accept their testimony? No. We're going to knock out their testimony. We just won't give them the punishment, kasher zaman, because they wouldn't have been successful in getting me to pay the money. But they do get, that one witness will get knocked out. Whereas, let's say, confession won't get knocked out, right? Two witnesses will get knocked out, one witness will get knocked out, which means, again, it counterbalances the confession. And again, we're left with, from the combination of the two, we can learn two witnesses. So we're done with this section, which basically, after a long-winded discussion, we finally figured out what the kal v'chomer is. We've dealt with some possible questions on the Kavach Homer. 2 witnesses, what do you mean? The guy's a liar. How could he take an oath? No, we resolved that. He's not really a liar because it's a loan case. Then, and loan, we said it was not a liar. We dealt with this issue about it's not Hazama, because really it is Hazama. It's just you don't get punished for Hazama, but yes, you could get knocked out based on Hazama for Eid Echad, so that counterbalances the confession, which isn't knocked out, and we're set. But what's the problem? The problem is Rabbi Chiya. How did we get to this whole din of Rabbi Chiya in the first place? Right? This is the way the Gemara works. It's because, it doesn't really have to do with our Mishna, but because Rabbi Chiya used our Mishna as proof. That was the whole thing. Number 1, he said we have a Kavach Homer, which was the first part in that we dealt with right now. Number 2, which is going to deal with right now, he used our Mishna as a proof. Now the Gemara is going to take issue with that and actually reject the proof from our Mishna. So now we're going to say, Ela dika amar Tanatuna. Tanatuna was the introduction, right? It always sounds funny. Tanatuna, what it means is, right, we can use our Mishna as a proof for what he said. And what did we say? Because 2 witnesses on part of claim can cause us to take an oath, right? Means each side will have to take an oath. In this case, each one is holding half the talit. Each one has to take an oath because they have half a claim they have witnesses to prove half a claim, not the other half, so they have to take an oath. Okay, now, we're now going to say that is not a good proof at all, because what? Midame. Hatam, in the case that Rabbi Chiya was talking about, where you claim I owe you 100, I claim I owe you nothing, and 2 witnesses come and say I owe 50, I now have to take an oath on the other 50. Well, hatam lemilveit le'sadeh, le'loveit le'sadeh de'lomasik le'velomidi. Well, what's the case? In the case that Rabbi Chiya talked about, the person who loaned the money has proof for half, not for the other half. Do I have proof that I don't owe the other half? No, I've got no proof. That's why I have to take an oath. Okay? If I had proof that I don't owe the other 50, that I don't owe you any, the other 50, Rabbi Chiya wouldn't require an oath. Well, let's look at our case. Each is holding half. So each one has proof that they own. So each one basically has proof that they own half, and that the other half, and that's their denial. So in a sense, they at least have proof one claims I owe the whole thing, and the other one proves, no, I own the whole thing. And the other one proves I don't owe you half of it. Half of it I'm holding. So each side has proof in our Mishnah, which means, because each side is holding the half that they're proving, which means they shouldn't have to take an oath. So even if you're going to say in the Adim case, you're going to need an oath because the borrower has no proof at all, and all the proof is against them in half, and they have no proof to support their half. In this case, each one has proof to support half of their claim. So it must be the oath in our Mishnah has to do with something else, and therefore can't be used by Rabbi Chiya to derive his halakha. So therefore, right, right, each one has proof for their half, which means every side can prove their own half. And therefore, and even so, you need an oath. It must be the oath is coming for some other reason. What other reason? We already know. What's the reason for the oath? We already said, Rabbi Yochanan said it. So that everybody won't just come and grab a talit that belongs to somebody else, right? Somebody finds a talit, you see them, you say, oh, I'll grab half and half will be mine. And that's the reason for the oath. And it's not because we have witnesses on Sadeh because I'm holding half. And therefore we make the other side kind of take an oath about their half. That's not why. So the oath must be for some other reason. Rabbi Chiya can't use this as proof. So now we're a little bit stuck because Rabbi Chiya said, I have a Chomer to prove my point, and I have a Mishnah to prove my point, our Mishnah. So now we're going to say that, okay, Tanatuna means also like someone else brought this Mishnah as a proof for Rabbi Chiya. So now we're going to just simply say, oh, there was a problem in the transmission of this whole thing. After Rabbi Chiya itmar. They got confused. Our Mishnah provides a proof, but not for what Rabbi Chiya said, which basically means this has no place in our sugya at all. Because the whole reason we brought that whole halakha of Rabbi Chiya, which we had to figure out what's the kal v'chomer and all that, aid and bemiktzat obligates you an oath, has absolutely nothing to do with our topic. And it was actually something else that Rabbi Chiya said, where you're obligated an oath, that he used our Mishnah to prove. Okay, what's that? Da'amar Rabbi Chiya, mana li biyadcha, v'hala omer en lecha biyadi ela 50 zuz, v'heilach chayav. Now, we started with modeh bemiktzat. Modeh bemiktzat means I admit to half a claim. Now we're going to say, what if I admit to half a claim, but I say heilach? What does heilach mean? So it's a little bit confusing, but we'll go with a basic interpretation here. You claim I owe you 100. I say I only owe you 50, and here it is. It's right here. I have $50 in my wallet. That's your money. Okay? Or I give it to you right away. Okay? Either way, I either give it to you or I just say, oh yeah, this $50 is yours. Well, according to Rabbi Chiya, that's also modeh bemiktzat, and I have to take an oath on the other half. Now, so what? Well, we're going to see Rav Sheshet disagrees. Rav Sheshet thinks there's no oath here, and why not? Because when I say heilach, basically is, and this is yours, I basically cut that part of the claim off from the other part. It's basically saying this half of the claim we're done with, and it's finished, and it's yours. Whether I give it to you or I say, here it is, and as if like you can come take it right now. We've done with that part. We're done with it. And now we just have a claim for the other 50. But that stands separate. Okay, if I say, yes, you claim I owe you 100, I only owe you 50, I'll get it to you at some point. Well, then we still have a claim going of half of it I owe and half of it I deny, right? That's different than if I already kind of complete the first part of the claim and finish it right then and there. So comes Rabbi Chiya and he says, we still view this as one whole claim, and we still call this modeh bemiktzat, and you have to take an oath. And the rest of our sugya today is going to be about this. Okay? My timer. Heilach nami ki modeh bemiktzat tana dami. It's really one and the same. And what's my proof? Our Mishnah. Okay, now we're going to basically take that line that was said about, we thought it was said about the other statement of Rabbi Chiya. It's now going to be said about this. V'tanatuna, and we can use our Mishnah as a proof. Shnayim ochazim b'tali. Now, why is this similar? Because kevan detachis, since each one is holding half, anan sade demai detachis heilachu. Each one is basically, okay, when I see you holding half and I claim that half is mine, it's like, right, it's as if there's witnesses saying it's not mine. Okay, so we're basically, or the part that I'm saying is mine is definitely mine, and the part that you're saying is not mine is definitely not mine. So we're already, it's like heilach. It's like, okay, well, whatever's in my hand is clearly in my hand, and whatever's in your hand is clearly in your hand. And that's not budging, and that kind of separates it into two. And what do you see? Even though it's like heilach, katana yishava. It says you have to take an oath, though. You still have to take an oath about the part that, right, about what, in order to keep it as yours, you're going to have to take an oath. Okay, so that's his proof from our Mishnah. And the proof from our Mishnah is not on the other case. It's not on edut bemiktzat, witnesses that testify about half. When I deny the entire thing, no. It's about when I admit half and I deny half. And that's like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is not exactly the same, but it's similar. So now Rav Sheshet amar heilach patur. Rav Sheshet disagrees, as I told you. Rav Sheshet thinks if I say I admit to half and here's your half, then they're two totally separate claims and there's no oath. My time, kevan damale heilach, hani zuzi de kamodi begabayu kemandi nakalu milva dami. The ones that I admitted to are as if you took them already, even if you didn't. But there is if. If I say these $50 in my wallet are yours, it's as if you took them. And therefore, bi'ina chamishin halo modeh. And then we have 50 that I completely deny. And therefore, we don't view this. We view them as two totally separate claims. Well, what about the Rav Sheshet kasha matnitin? What about our Mishnah? To which we simply answer, which we just use the proof for Rabbi Chiya. Remember, we keep going back to this. Our Mishnah is not a regular oath case. It's just the rabbis instituted this so that people don't grab other people's talitot. Well, now obviously we're going to question Rabbi Chiya from this. If it's not a real oath by law, and it's just because the rabbis didn't want people grabbing other people's talitot and, things that people find on the street, and someone's just going to grab half and claim it's theirs. Well, then what does this have to do with heilach? So Amar Lacharav Beida, what's Rabbi Chiya going to say? In takanat chachamim, it is takana of the rabbis. Umiyu, but Iamar Bishlam. Now remember, I said it's not exactly heilach; it's similar to heilach. So comes Rabbi Chiya and he says the following: the rabbis don't just invent something out of the blue. When they say we're instituting an oath, it's going to have to be like another oath that exists on a Torah level. So here's the Rabbi Chiya's perfect proof. If you're going to say on a Torah level, when there's clear, right, when the guy says, this is it and it's yours, you're going to be obligated to take an oath on the other half. Then when the rabbis instituted a case here where each one is holding half and it's like a heilach case, they're going to institute it in the same way that they would on a Torah level. But if you're going to say that heilach is exempt on a Torah level, they can't just invent a Shevuot, as we say, yesh me'ayin, like bringing something out of the blue that doesn't exist anywhere else. And that's Rabbi Chiya's view. So basically, we have two approaches here, how to read our Mishnah in terms of, does it prove heilach? Does it not prove heilach? So again, what does heilach mean? If I admit to half and say, and this half is completely yours right now, and this is it, and here it is, then basically, according to Rabbi Chiya, I'm still obligated an oath. According to Rav Sheshet, I'm not obligated an oath. Rabbi Chiya tries to prove it from our Mishna, even though our Mishna is not exactly the same, and everyone agrees it's all a rabbinic oath because we've already established it's a rabbinic oath, but it's a rabbinic oath that's instituted like a Torah oath in a modeh bemiktzat heilach case. And Rav Sheshet says, no, it's just a rabbinic oath that's a new rabbinic oath that the rabbis instituted, and it doesn't bother. Now what we're left to do for this next part of the page is raise three difficulties, three that are sort of four, but three difficulties. The first two are going to be part of one sugya, and I say this meaning. We're going to take one braita about something. We're going to use it as a difficulty on Rabbi Chiya, who said that heilach is chayav, a Shevuot. Then we're going to take a different version of it, okay? It's going to be a mirror sugya, okay? We're going to first use the braita. The braita has two opinions. We're going to infer something from one of the sides and raise it as a difficulty on Rabbi Chiya and resolve it. Then in the second version, and I say second version because there were two different versions, not that this was used twice, there was a debate about whether they used this as a difficulty on Rabbi Chiya, or there was a debate about whether they used it as difficulty on Rav Sheshet. So the second version is going to take the same source, but focus on the second opinion in that source and use it as difficulty on Rav Sheshet, resolve it. That's why I say three that are four, because then once they resolve it, they're going to say, well, doesn't this raise a question on Rabbi Chiya? And they're going to quickly resolve that one. Then we're going to have another source, which is a Mishna in Shevuot, and we're going to use that as a difficulty on Rav Sheshet, and we're going to resolve that as well. Okay, so that's the structure for today, for the rest of today's stuff. Metive. So metive means we're going to bring a question from a Tannaitic source. And as I said, we're on Rabbi Chiya now, who says the heilach, if you have a case of modeh bemiktzat with heilach, you're still obligated to know. Slaim dinarim. If we have a document that says, I owe you, okay, top of Amud Bet, I owe you either slaim, I owe you dinarim, these are currencies, coins. I owe you a slaim, but it doesn't say how many slaim. It doesn't say 100 slaim, 100 dinarim. It didn't say how many. Now, because it didn't say how many, the minimum, since it's plural, is 2. That's the minimum. Well, what happens? Since it didn't say, right, you fill in the blank. What do you say? Malva omer chamesh. You say it was 5. Lova omer shalosh. I said it was only 3. No, I didn't say 2. I said 3. Because I didn't say 3, this is like a modeh bemiktzat case. Because the first 2, there's proof. It says it in the document. The next 3 are debatable, right? We don't know. You claim it. I deny it, but I only partially deny it. I admit to part. So I admit to 1. I don't admit to all 3. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Ho'il v'hoda miktzat atana yishaba. He says this is modeh bemiktzat. Rabbi Chiya, right? It seems pretty basic. 2 were agreed upon by everybody. Then we have 3 in debate. I admit to 1. I have to take an oath about the other 2. Rabbi Chiya Omer, Eino ela k'meshiva v'da'u patur. What do you mean? We have a document that says 2. I say any more than 2, I'm like returning you a lost item because there's no way you could have had any proof to claim that unless you brought witnesses, but you don't have witnesses. So it's like I'm returning a lost item. Why is that relevant? Well, we learned in Gitin, you might remember, in the Shiur of Tikkun Olam, you may not remember, but I'll remind you, that when you find a lost item, and let's say the owner says, very nice, you're returning me my lost item, but I had, that's a necklace with one charm on it and it had 5 charms on it. And where are the rest of them? And now you would say, modeh bemiktzat, right? I say, here's 1, and you say there were 5 charms. And I don't have to take an oath about that because otherwise I'll never pick up some item on the street. If I know that by picking up the item and trying to return it, I'm going to have to incur oaths, I'll never want to do that. People hate it to take oaths, right? Nobody likes to do that. So, because you always second guess yourself, and oaths are very serious. We talked about that the other day, so I'm not going to go back there. But it's like returning a lost item. So, because the document said 2, and I'm claiming 3, I'm giving you more than what you thought, than what you could have ever gotten in court. So I should know, no way do I need to take an oath. Oh, what does this have to do with anything? Well, let's see. Katani miyat. Let's go back to the braita now. On the first part of the braita, the first opinion, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, ho'il v'hodam bemiktzat tana yishava. Now, here goes our inference. The machloket between them is about 3. What if I said 2? Okay. Now, Tama damar shalosh. The reason why Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says I have to take an oath is because I said 3. Because I was modeh bemiktzat. Because remember, 3 is really, right? It's 1 more than what was obvious, the 2. And it's 1 out of the 3 that you're claiming. 1 at, right? I said 3, and you say also 4 and 5, and I deny 4 and 5, so I have to pay. Hashtayim. What if I just said I owe you 2? I wouldn't have to take an oath because I'm not modeh bemiktzat. I'm just modeh to what the shtar says. I'm not modeh to anything really. I'm dealing with what it said there. So I wouldn't have to take an oath on the other. That's what it seems like. Now, what does this have to do with anything? He says, well, hashtar de kamodebe heilachu. It's kind of like a heilach case because I'm saying if I only say I agree to 2, it is like a modeh bemiktzat. It's like a modeh bemiktzat with heilach because I'm saying I owe you 2 and here they are because they're written in the document. So I'm definitely going to give it to you. Now, if you remember also, when you have a document, it's mishuabad to land, right? If I don't pay you those 2, you can come take it from my land, which means it's as if my land is yours already, okay? Or my money. So it's like heilach. And what do you see here? Heilach is exempt. I don't have to take an oath. Again, Rav Shimon ben Elazar never said this, but they're assuming if he says 3 you're obligated, it must be you're exempted 2 though. So for Shema Mina, heilach is patur. To which they say, why are you getting to that inference? Everybody thinks at 2 you have to take an oath. Again, why? Because this is Rabbi Chiya's reading, and heilach is chayav. And if we view this case as a heilach case, then you're going to have to take an oath at 2, because 2 is basically saying, I deny your 3, I agree to your 2, right? The first 2 I agree with, 3, 4, and 5 I don't agree with, and, right, you're obligated. Now, why then did it say on 3 he disagrees with Rabbi, right? On 3 there's a machloket, hayt ketana shalosh, lafuki mit Rabbi Kiva da'amal, meshiva bedaha ve'u patur. Kamash malan debod bemiktzat atana ve'chayav. In other words, the way we're going to read this sugya is, everyone agrees at 2 you're going to have to pay. The question is just at 3, do we view this as meshiva bedah, or do we view it as modeh bemiktzat? Okay? And that's the way we read it, and that works. But what's the problem? That doesn't make sense, actually. And they're going to reject this reading and be back to questioning Rabbi Chiya. Ihachi, if Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar thinks you're obligated at 2, and you're obligated 2 because of heilach, and you're obligated 3 because it's a regular modeh bemiktzat, because at this point you've added 1, right, that they have no proof for, it's not a heilach, and you're obligated, well then he should, right, what did he say? Ho'il v'hodam bemiktzat tana yishava. Why are you obligated to take an oath? Because it's modeh bemiktzat, because you've admitted to part. It should have said, af ze yishavam bevayale. If Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar thought at 2 you take an oath, and at 3 you take an oath, and he argues about the case of 3, but Rabbi Akiva already agreed at the case of 2, according to our reading, because everyone thinks heilach is obligated, according to Rabbi Chiya, and everyone thinks at 2 you're going to have to take an oath, then Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar should have said, you also need to take an oath at 3. And Rabbi Akiva says you don't need to take an oath at 3. So the language should have been different. It sounds like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is really saying only at 3 you take an oath, not at 2, which raises the problem. So they're back to thinking what we thought originally, which is Ela lo olam shtayim patur v'heilach. But heilach is still chayav. So now we're going to have to figure out. Really, everyone thinks heilach is exempted too. And only at 3 do they start arguing, right? Yes or no, and bemiktzat or not. But at 2, it's exempt. Why? Isn't it heilach? And now we're going to explain no. It's exempt, not because of heilach. Really, Rabbi Chiya holds heilach is you're obligated to take an oath. But what? This is a unique case that's not a classic heilach case. Why not? We're going to give 2 possible answers. This is really not a classic heilach case. Why is that? What's heilach? Heilach is, what did we say heilach is in a modeh bemiktzat case, right? Heilach is, you claim I owe you 100. I claim I only owe you 50, and I say, and here's the 50. In this case, we had a document saying that I owed 2. So when I admit to owing 2, that's not heilach. That's because I have a shtar proving, and the shtar says 2. That's why when I say I owe you 2, I have a shtar. If I really owed you 5, and what do we want to prove here? Once I say 3, and I change it from what the shtar said, then already I'm modeh bemiktzat. If I say 2, I basically have a shtar to prove my point, because if you really lent me more than 2, you should have written it in the document. The document said sla'im, which basically means just 2 sla'im, which means the document supports me. That's why I don't have to take an oath, because I have a document supporting my claim. What's stronger than that? Inami, alternatively, you could say, mishum dahavile shtar shi'bud karka, ve'ein ishbein al kirat shi'bud karka oath. There are no oaths on land, okay? This is something that's a basic halakha. You only take oaths when it's a claim on movables. We don't take oaths on land. Now, this isn't a claim on land, but since it's a claim in a document, and I admit to the 2 in the document, well, basically what I'm admitting, we thought it was heilach, because it's like saying, oh, well, it's linked to land, and it's as if I'm giving it to you. But as soon as it's linked to land, if it's really a claim on land, now it's not a claim on land, it's a claim on money, and on money you do need to take an oath. But since it's a written document, and the written document is linked to land, it's like a claim on land. And there are no oaths on claims on land, and that's why we need to take an oath at 2. So that explains how Rabbi Chiya can read this. Still think Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says at 2 you're exempt, but not because it's a heilach case. It's because of other reasons that I'm exempt. Okay. Now we're going to take that same source and use it as a question on Rav Sheshet. Some people use it as a difficulty from the second part. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Eino ela k'meshiva beidau patur. Now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to infer from him. He said you're exempt at 3. That must mean he thinks you're obligated at 2. And if you're obligated at 2, that means heilach is obligated. Because again, assuming it's a heilach case. And then that's going to be a difficulty on Rav Sheshet, who said you're not obligated for heilach. So Tama da Amar Shalosh, that's why I call it a mirror image sugya. We're doing the same type of thing, because again, it's a different version of what happened here. That's why they're similar but different, because they're taking not Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Akiva's statement, and they're inferring the opposite, but in the same type of way. The reason why he says that Meshiva Beida, once you're adding more, you're going to be exempt from an oath because you're doing something nice, right? And then we're going to do a tikkun olam. So you don't do that. So, people, when you return lost items, we don't want to deter you from doing that. Hashtayim, but if it was 2, you'd be obligated. V'hashtal, dekamodebe, keheilach dami. And since it's a shtar, it's a document, it's as if I'm saying, well, this is yours, take it right now. Shema mina, and you'd be obligated to take an oath. So shema mina, heilach chayav. And that goes against Rav Sheshet, to which they say, lo, la'olam em l'chashtayim nami patur. They're going to do the exact same thing. They're going to say, why do you infer that? It's not a true inference. Really, 2 is exempt, and so is 3. The high dekatane shalosh, why does it say 3 then is exempt? Well, lafu kemi de Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, damar mod mitzad tana havi b'chayav. In other words, everyone agrees 2, you're exempt. The machaloka becomes 3, where all of a sudden Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says you actually have to take an oath, because at this point you're modeh bemiktzat. And before that, it was just heilach. Everyone thinks you're exempt. But, because again, this is Rav Sheshet's reading. And comes Rabbi Akiva and disagrees and says, no, you're exempt. So don't infer from Rabbi Akiva that he thinks you're obligated at 2. No, he also thinks you're exempt at 2. Everyone thinks you're exempt at 2 because heilach is exempt. And furthermore, we're going to prove this, hachinami mistabra, and now we're going to look at it instead of from a tedious technical point of view. Let's think about the case. B'shalosh hechi patro la Rabbi Akiva. Ha'iruma kama arim. Savar iyamina b'shtayim, but ishtaba, ema shalosh, tahavi kemisha b'avida ve'ipater. This would create an absurd situation. If Rabbi Akiva were to say what we thought as a difficulty on Rav Sheshet, that at 2 you have to take an oath. So if I say I owe you 2, I have to take an oath on the other 3. Let's say I'm lying. I don't want to take an oath. So what will I do? You're claiming 5. I'll just claim 3. I'll pay you 3, and I'll exempt myself from the other 2, and I won't have to take an oath. So it's in my better interest to lie and say 3 if the law is more lenient at 3. So basically, it would be incentivizing me to lie and say 3. So therefore, there's no way that at 2 you'd be obligated and at 3 you'd be exempt. That would be ridiculous. Everyone would just lie and say 3 and exempt themselves from the other 2. Therefore, elishmami nashtaim nami patur. So it must be 2 is exempt and so is 3. Well, if that's the case, now flipping it back to Rabbi Chiya, what did Rabbi Chiya say? At 2, everybody agrees you're liable. And Rabbi Akiva comes and says you don't have to at 3. Well, that's going to make no sense according to Rabbi Chiya then based on what we just said. It would be a ridiculous thing that everyone would then lie at 3. So again, what did we say? We're going to use the same 2 answers in the first version we have for Rabbi Chiya. Really, at 2, you're going to be, if it's heilach, you would be obligated. This case, you happen not to be obligated for technical reasons, either because I have a shtar to prove my point, so therefore I'm believed, because the shtar supports my reading, which is 2, and I don't have to then take an oath about the other 3, or because once there's a shtar about 2, it's all lien to property, which basically doesn't require an oath. And for those 2 side reasons, I don't have to. But again, this doesn't have to do with heilach. Okay, so we use this source either to raise difficulty against one or the other. Now we're going to just finish with the third question. Now we're in a Mishna in Shevuot about oaths. Ta'ano kelim v'karkaot. Hoda b'kelim v'kapar b'karkaot. Hoda b'karkaot v'kapar b'kelim patur. If I claim you owe me cars and I claim you owe me land, okay? Kelim could be anything, vessels, right? Movable things. And you admit you owe me cars, but you don't admit to the land. Or you admit you owe me land, you don't owe me cars. Okay, you're exempt. This is obvious because it's not modeh bemiktzat, and remember, there's no oaths on land. Hoda bemiktzat karkaot patur. If you deny part of the land, okay, I say you owe me an acre of land, and you say I only owe you half an acre, you're exempt. Bemiktzat kelim chayav. If you say say you owe me 10 cars, and you say I only owe you 5, you have to take an oath. Now, this Mishnah could not be telling you the basic, what we think it's telling you, because everybody knows, and it says in the Mishnah elsewhere, there's no oaths on land, there's modeh bemiktzat and property, on movables. So the Gemara has to say, this obviously isn't saying that, it must be telling you something a little bit different, which is, Tama de kelim v'karkaot. Okay, the reason why the first 2 cases, right, there's kelim, and your modeh kelim, or your modeh karkaot, your modeh, right, we don't take that. De karka la bat shvuah, right, that's because there is no oaths for land. Ha kelim b'kelim, dumia de kelim b'karkaot chayav. So when they talk at the end about the kelim, hoda b'kelim, you're obligated, they can't be talking about just a basic Shevuot modeh bemiktzat of kelim, like 5 cars and you owe me 5 cars. It must be something that's like kelim and karkaot. What could that be? What could be similar to land? Heilach. So hechidami lav da'amar le heilach. So they're rereading this last part and saying, Hoda bemiktzat kelim chayav. They must say, it must be saying when it's heilach also, when it's kelim and heilach. I owe you 5 cars and here they are. And then it says chayav, and that goes against Rav Sheshet, who says you're patur. So they say, no. Don't think that that's the way you read it. Why? Because what it really means is lo. La'olam emelcha kelim b'kelim nami patur. But hadikatani, if you really did kelim and kelim heilach, you would be exempt, like Rav Sheshet. But what's this teaching you? And with this we'll finish. Dekatani kelim v'karkaot, hakamash malan, hoda b'miktzat kelim chayav afal karkaot. The second part of this Mishnah is saying, if we had a claim on cars and land, and you admitted to half the cars, since you'd have to take an oath on the other half of the cars, you also have to take an oath on the land. Okay, and if it was the reverse, we had land, our claim was about land and cars, same thing, but you admitted to half the land, Since you wouldn't have taken an oath about the land, you wouldn't have taken an oath about the cars. And that's why I said we're going to end with Gilgul Shevuot. This is just like Gilgul Shevuot. Since you have to take an oath on the Kalim, we're going to make you take an oath also on the land. And this has nothing at all to do with heilach. The Gemara is going to ask a side question on this, and we're going to resolve it, but we'll get to that tomorrow. So basically what we did today is we tried to figure out what the Kal V'chomer is. We finally figured that out. We said the Mishna, though, doesn't really work as a proof for Rabbi Chiya. So we took the Mishna, we basically cut and pasted it on a different sugya and said it's actually proving a different sugya, which is this thing that we've been talking about. Heilach is modeh bemiktzat with heilach, chayav or pater for Shevuot. And Rabbi Chiya used it to prove your chayav, and used our Mishna as proof. Rav Sheshet that doesn't serve as a proof. And then we brought two versions of whether this braita about the dinarim and slaim is a difficulty on Rabbi Chiya or is a difficulty on Rav Sheshet. We resolved all the difficulties. Then we brought this other Mishna in Shevuot as difficulty on Rav Sheshet, and then said, no, you didn't understand what the Mishna was talking about. It was talking about something entirely different, has nothing to do with heilach. And with this, we'll finish for today. A bit of a long daf, and not the simplest daf either. But we got through it. Hopefully it's organized for you now, and wishing everybody a great day and a great week.